session 1 of a series I'm just calling Worldview. The way we view the world affects the way we see God. And in Mark 8 we have the story where Jesus had just fed 4,000 people with 7 loaves of bread. It's a separate time from the feeding of the 5,000 where they had 5 loaves and 2 fish. But this feeding of the 4,000 has just happened. And as they were leaving, some Pharisees came to Jesus and they asked for a sign from heaven. In other words, they were asking Jesus to validate himself to them. But Jesus simply said no and got into his boat and went across the lake with the disciples. Now we read that the disciples only had 1 loaf of bread with them. And suddenly out of the blue, it seems, Jesus says, watch out for the yeast of the Pharisees and that of Herod. And the message was so unexpected that the disciples sort of began asking each other, is he talking about the fact that we haven't got enough bread? You know, what's going on? Jesus knew what they were talking about and he said, why are you talking about having no bread? Do you still not understand? Are your hearts hardened? Do you have eyes but fail to see and ears but fail to hear? Don't you remember? That's Mark 8:17-18. So what does he mean? He's talking about how we perceive things, talking about our worldview. We know that yeast makes dough rise. So if you like, the yeast is a picture of how we think things happen, what makes the world, what's the essence of what the world is about. Jesus warned them to be wary of the yeast of the Pharisees. That is, don't think like the Pharisees did. Now the Pharisees came about after the return from exile because many of the people who returned were starting to adopt characters and characteristics and habits of the people around them. And so the Pharisees wanted to make sure that the law of God was properly adhered to. So they became quite meticulous in keeping the law. They were actually very good living, worthwhile people. Their fanaticism for the law led them to be actually quite fanatical about keeping it. In Matthew 5:20 it says, Jesus said, for I tell you, unless your righteousness surpasses that of the Pharisees and the teachers of the law, you'll certainly not enter the kingdom of heaven. See, they were so meticulous that they would tithe their herb garden. They searched the scriptures. They were known for their long prayers, and they'd go to great lengths even to make one convert. Yet, while they kept the law of God, and certainly did it better than most of us do, their issue was that it was all external. Their hearts didn't love. Now there's a world view that God is creator. He's at the heart of everything. His laws must be obeyed, but doesn't actually have anything to do with the inner workings of our lives. That's a religious worldview. Unfortunately, it's one that does hold sway in many Christian lives. God cares about what's in the heart, and if the heart is right with God, then following the law of God becomes something that we simply desire to do.
Change my heart.